Good morning. Today is Friday, March 24th, 2023. With this week's Torah portion, the Parsha VaYikra, the beginning of the third book of the Torah, we usher in a new era of serving God through karbanos, the sacrifices, the offerings, and that took place in a very specific manner, with very specific details, as we will learn throughout this book of the Torah, in the Mishkan, the sanctuary that was built by the Jewish people and that traveled with the Jewish people for 40 years through the desert. When the Jewish people came into the land of Israel, the Mishkan was still the central sanctuary, and that Mishkan was in use for about the first 400 years after the Jewish people came into the land of Israel. For most of that time, it was located in Shiloh, which is a small town just north of Yerushalayim. After that period, finally, David HaMelech, King David, decided to establish Yerushalayim as the capital of Israel and to build a beautiful, magnificent Bet HaMikdash, a holy temple in Jerusalem. And this would be the place where God's presence would continue to be apparent. It would be a place that would be the heart of the Jewish people. It would be a focal point uniting all Jews and to which all Jews would come. Now, David HaMelech, King David, began that work, and his son Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, completed it. And it was magnificent. And when it was completed, all the Jewish people at that time gathered for a great ceremony as the objects, the utensils, the vessels, were transferred from the Mishkan, which had been in use for about 450 years approximately, transferred the utensils into this new permanent structure, the Bet HaMikdash, and the ceremony is described in Sefer Malachim, the Book of Kings. There were sacrifices that were offered. Shlomo prayed a moving prayer to God with requests for security and for peace and bountiful crops. And the celebration lasted for 7 days. And then the Navi tells us, Book of Malachim, Sefer Malachim, Book of Kings, Bayom Hashmini, on the 8th day of this celebration, inaugurating the permanent Bet HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, Shilach es ha'am, Shlomo sent the people home. VaYivarchu es ha'melech, and the king, Solomon, blessed the people. Vayelchu la'alechem, smechem v'tuvei lev, and they went home to their homes, joyous, happy, and with glad hearts. Wow. It was a golden moment in Jewish history, against which all other moments are judged. There was prosperity, there was peace, everything you could want, and they were happy. What was the content of that happiness? What was it that elicited that special happiness at that moment? Our rabbis in the Medrash, Yalkut Shimuni, say, Shenenu miziv hashchina. They were happy at feeling the closeness to God's presence. They had this spiritual feeling of closeness, of enjoying the beauty of God's presence. That was what was the source and the content of their happiness. Let me ask you a question. That's it? That was the happiness? That's all it was? There was once a very wealthy Jewish man, and he gave an extremely generous donation to Rabbi Aaron Kotler, one of the great, great sages who began the yeshiva in Lakewood, New Jersey, which is now one of the largest yeshivas in the world. And he gave Rabbi Aaron Kotler a very generous donation for his yeshiva. And Rabbi Aaron gave this wealthy patron a bracha, a blessing. And the blessing that he gave this man was that in the world to come, you should merit to sit and to study Torah all day long, day and night. That was the blessing. The man frowned a little bit. I guess he was hoping for something a little bit more immediately and obviously enjoyable than in the world to come he's going to be able to sit and study Torah all day and all night. And Rav Aaron said to him, don't worry. Part of the blessing is that you're going to enjoy it. That you will want that bracha. That's part of the bracha. Okay, so that was the bracha. That was the blessing. And that is what caused this beautiful and bountiful happiness and joy, that they had the joy of closeness to Hashem. Asks Rav Avraham Pam the following question. How do our rabbis in the Medrash know that the happiness that is referred to in this verse, Vayelchu la'alechem smechem, they went home and they were happy, how do the rabbis in the Medrash know that it was a spiritual happiness? Maybe it was some other kind of happiness. The pasuk only says they were happy, they were joyous, sameach, they were joyous, they were happy. People are happy for all sorts of reasons. Maybe it was a physical, material happiness. Maybe before they left, they had a great meal. Maybe because of their new security and peace, their assets were worth more. They were happy because they were wealthier. Rabbi Pam says, let's read the words of the pasuk more carefully. Vayelchu la'alechem smechem. The pasuk, the verse does not say they left happy. The verse says they returned home and they were happy. Now, how can that be? Some people, when they left the new Bet HaMikdash, they left Jerusalem, they lived close by. They got home, I don't know, in a few hours. There were some people that lived further away. It may have taken a couple of days to get home. And there were some who lived far away. It might have taken them several weeks to get home. That means several weeks of traveling all day long, day after day, and some of them maybe with children. Imagine that. And yet the Torah tells us that everyone, when he or she reached home, they were happy. How is that possible? How can that be possible that each person, after some length of time, would still be happy? And Rav Pam answers with a yesod, a basic fundamental principle of life. And this is about one of the most important lessons that I can ever share with you. There is only one type of happiness that can do that. There is only one source of happiness that can last over time, and that is a spiritual happiness. The happiness that comes from helping another person, from doing a mitzvah, from studying Torah, from coming closer to God. The truth is, every one of us, we try so hard to pursue happiness. We pursue happiness in money and in physical appearance and in material objects and food and leisurely activities. And they may make us happy momentarily. But that happiness does not last. There is no vacation that you can take. There is no meal that you can eat. There is no object that you can buy that will give you happiness long term. Only if those things are used for some higher purpose. Now, you may have a memory of happiness, but the happiness itself is not long-term unless it is connected to something non-tangible, intangible, something that is not physical. That is the only way that that joy will actually continue long-term. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I don't mean to denigrate physical and material pleasure. There's a great story about Rabbi Shamshon Hirsch, great rabbi in Germany in the late 1800s. Near the end of his life, he announced to his family he was going to tour Switzerland on foot. So his family was was alarmed. He was an elderly man. They wanted to dissuade him. They thought he would be risking his health. And Rav Hirsch explained to them, at the end of my life, when I come before the Almighty, I will have to answer for many things. But what will I say to God when God asks me, Shamshon, did you see my Alps? Did you see my Alps? I've got to go see them. So go and see the Alps and enjoy the Alps and everything else. But it can only make you happy long time if that pleasure is used for some transcendent purpose. To see the Alps, to experience the grandeur of the world God gave us. To enjoy delicious food in order to be able to honor Shabbos, in order to be able to share it with others. To be able to enjoy a surplus in our income, to use it to be hospitable or to help someone else who is in need. To make use of physical beauty in order to develop a caring and loving relationship, etc., etc. That's when happiness lasts. Otherwise, if that pursuit of joy and happiness becomes an end in and of itself, it quickly vanishes. More than vanishes, it decays, it rots, it destroys. I am willing to bet that if I were to ask any one of you, and if I were to ask myself the following question, I'll give you $1 million right now. Will you be more or less happy? Would you say yes? I will admit I would say yes. But here's the truth. After the initial moment of happiness at having $1 million, the truth is it will fade. Statistically, the chances are that it will not be true that I will be happier. I know a man who owned a small business and he sold it for $11 million. Wow. What could be better than that? A few months later, each one of his 6 children have their own therapist. He and his wife are divorcing. He's 60 years old. He has no way to fill his time. Studies show, it sounds amazing, but it is absolutely true. Studies show that lottery winners, big winners, multi-million-dollar winners, a year after their prize, their level of happiness is equal to people 1 year after becoming a paraplegic, God forbid. Because that's the truth. Money cannot buy happiness. Things cannot make you happy unless they are used for some higher purpose, for some transcendent purpose, for some spiritual purpose. Had that man that I just mentioned taken his money and started an interest-free loan fund to help unemployed people get back on their feet, he would have a much better chance of being happy today. But many of us resist being more spiritual. We resist being more religious. We balk at the thought of setting aside some of our leisure time to study Torah. Not you. Baruch Hashem, thank God. You are willing to spend time studying Torah. Fantastic. But so many people are unwilling to do that because we think, I don't want to restrict myself. I don't want to be obligated to do this, prohibited from doing that. I just want to be free. I want to be happy. I want to do whatever I want. But long term, the opposite is true. The more mitzvos, the more Torah, the more charity, the more acts of kindness, the happier we will be. Because it is only these sources of happiness that will endure. It is only these sources of happiness that you will be able to look back on in the future and feel satisfaction and accomplishment and joy that is long-term. And there are so many opportunities for real, lasting happiness. So take the best advice Judaism has to offer and make yourself happier. Make your family happier. And make God happier. Indulge in the kind of happiness that can last till you get home, till next year, and for many, many more years to come. My friends, I wish you a great day and a wonderful Shabbos, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.